So Banjo and Kazooie are actually in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I'm so excited. People around the world are just celebrating and everybody seems super happy. It's pretty awesome. Also, Hero's in Smash, and basically Erdrick got in. So yeah, it seems like the leaks were right, as Erdrick is a alternate costume for Hero. And I think I even saw like on the Japanese page when you like translate it, Hero actually translates straight to Brave. So yeah, it seems like all that stuff was just totally right. We were on the money with this one. So yeah, I'm just super, super happy. We got Banjo, we got Hero, which is basically Erdrick, and yeah, everything's happened just the way we thought it was going to. It's honestly pretty surreal to think Banjo Kazooie are actually coming to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It hasn't totally settled for me yet. I kind of took the last couple days just to enjoy this and kind of just bask in the fact that Banjo's actually in Smash. But yeah, a character I've wanted for a very, very, very long time. Just getting Banjo back on Nintendo is something I've wanted for a really, really long time. Is actually happening. He's actually coming to Smash. Banjo and Kazooie getting in Smash Ultimate. It's unreal to me. So for today, this video is going to be a bit more of like a celebration video. Honestly, a retrospective is probably the best word for it. Just kind of a look back at how I got into Banjo Kazooie, how much I've wanted them for a very long time, and what that whole journey looked like up until Smash Ultimate, and then, you know, the Grinch Leak and that whole thing about having a source talking about Banjo, and what happened after the Grinch Leak didn't come true, and, you know, just kind of sticking with that as of maybe Banjo's coming, and hopefully following, you know, all the rumors and leaks and all the speculation stuff up until finally this E3 finding out Banjo is actually coming to Smash. So that's what this video is going to be, just kind of a retrospective on that whole journey and everything. I will get back into the speculation, leak, rumor side of things, because there is a lot to talk about post E3. There are some interesting things to follow. I've been compiling a bunch of stuff, so I will do, you know, that sort of video or videos on that sort of thing in the very near future, probably starting this next week here. There is still plenty of stuff to talk about speculation-wise in this post E3, post Banjo Kazooie, post Hero getting revealed climate that we're in right now. But again, for today, it's just going to be a stream of consciousness video talking about Banjo and Kazooie just because they're fresh. You know, we just got them in. I think a lot of people still have the mindset of what was happening before they got in. So I think it's important to talk about everything that happened up until that point right now before, you know, it kind of gets lost. Because a month, 2 months from now, you know, people are going to be like, yeah, Banjo, that was a shoo-in. Everybody knew Banjo was coming. That wasn't how it was. You know, people weren't thinking about it that way. So I want to, while it's fresh, while the Banjo reveal just happened, I want to talk about this whole journey, this whole lead up to them actually showing up in Smash. So I guess first I'll start with just like my own personal history with Banjo Kazooie, and it doesn't really even start with Banjo Kazooie. I actually think it starts with Mario 64. I got an N64 one Christmas. It was probably the Christmas N64 came out, honestly, so I'm thinking, was that 96? I got an N64 for Christmas. I got Mario 64 with it, and I just fell in love with that game right away. I remember having a really hard time moving around with the control stick. I wasn't used to that. I was used to a D-pad. It was kind of the first like 3D game I had played, and I just remember falling in love with that game. It was, to me, I don't know how old I was at the time, maybe like 9, 10 years old, somewhere around then. At the time, it was like the perfect video game. This was what video games should be like in my mind. And around that time, I would like make my own video games in like notebooks and stuff like that. I think most kids who are into gaming back then would do this sort of thing. I'd make my own characters, the own little world for them to like, you know, live in and stuff, and what the levels would be like and what the themes would be like, and this would be the bosses. And, you know, that was something that I did back then. And I'd always make the games basically like Mario 64. Again, to me, that was like the perfect video game. That was how video games should be. At the time, I didn't quite understand what a collectathon was. I don't think I quite made the leap in understanding of different genres of video games. But to me, if you're going to make a video game, you make a character and they exist in some sort of world, and there's all these other worlds that they go to. It's like a hub world with other themed worlds, exactly like Mario 64. So I would come up with characters. I kind of remember making this one game with like, it was like this bunny character and this pig character and this duck character. Now I'm saying it sounds very Looney Tunes, but that's not what they looked like when I drew them. And they existed, I think it was like on an island, and the island had ways to go to like different worlds, and like that was just the perfect game to me. It was something like that. It was going to be just like Mario 64, and I forget what they collected, but they were, you know, instead of stars, you were trying to get something, and all the levels had bosses and stuff, and like that was the perfect game to me. So that was the type of game I was constantly thinking about, constantly creating, or even if I took something else that already existed, like some cartoon or something that I liked, it was always like, okay, stick them in a hub world, and then in the hub world they'd somehow go to other worlds, and you know, that was what that video game should be like. If they made a good video game with that series, that's what it should be like. Obviously, after Mario 64, I was not the only person thinking that these collectathons were, you know, awesome. This was what video games should be like, because a ton of collectathons came out. Basically, everybody was kind of copying the Mario 64 formula. But the people who copied it best, in my opinion, was Rare when they made Banjo Kazooie. That game was like a spiritual sequel to Mario 64. It was everything you'd want in that type of collectathon game. Dare I say it was better than Mario 64. There was more stuff to collect. The game just felt bigger. It felt even, you know, the graphics were better and everything. It was pretty mind-blowing as a kid. It was the type of game that, again, when I was making my own games on like notebook paper and stuff like that, that's the type of game I wanted. And when Banjo Kazooie came out, man, it blew me away. It was like the perfect video game. So I absolutely fell in love with Banjo Kazooie, and I could talk all day about the different levels and getting transformed and finding out secrets and the stuff like the ice key that you couldn't even get to secrets, and just everything about that game was great. The quirky characters, the humor, the look of it, everything was so perfect. But I'm not going to talk about the game itself, because most people have probably already played it, and you know, I'm not going to give a review here. I want to talk about the journey of loving Banjo Kazooie and then them getting in Smash. So eventually, like, Banjo Tooie comes out, and I'm subscribed to Nintendo Power, and I buy the Nintendo Power player's guides for Banjo Kazooie. I got the Banjo Kazooie plush, I think, from some Nintendo Power, like, order magazine thing that came with one of the issues, and I was just super into Banjo Kazooie. I loved it, and, you know, Banjo's in Diddy Kong Racing, so in my mind, back then, you know, Banjo Kazooie is a Nintendo character. I was not totally aware of different companies. I think I knew about different companies. I knew about Rare. I knew about, you know, Square and Namco and just different companies. I understood that, but in my mind, it was like if something was on Nintendo, it was a Nintendo game. If something was on PlayStation, you know, it's a PlayStation game. If it was on Sega, it's a Sega game. I didn't make that distinction that these characters were technically from their own companies, especially Rare, because Rare was basically only making stuff for Nintendo and had been for a long time. So in my mind, Banjo was a Nintendo character, especially appearing in something like Diddy Kong Racing. You know, I just thought Banjo Kazooie, they're Nintendo characters. And I think a lot of kids, you know, had that same mentality. I mean, if you told some kid, you know, oh, Pokemon, that's not actually Nintendo. Nintendo, you know, has ownership in Game Freaks or whatever it is. And Game Freaks actually owns Pokemon, and I think now it's a Pokemon company or whatever. But if somebody told me, oh, yeah, Rare actually owns Banjo, and Nintendo actually, like, owns Rare, they're second party, you know, I didn't understand any of that back then. And I think a lot of kids didn't. So when Rare got bought by Microsoft, it was a big shock to me. I think that was around the time when I was starting to understand how all this stuff worked, but it was pretty shocking. I honestly thought Banjo was going to forever be a Nintendo character just as much as Mario or Link or Pikachu or any of those, you know, were Nintendo characters. I thought Banjo-Kazooie, that's a Nintendo character, but Microsoft swooped in and bought him out. So this is obviously nothing unique. A ton of people have this same story. They were big fans of Banjo on Nintendo on N64, and then Microsoft bought them and eventually came out with Nuts and Bolts, and they were pretty disappointed by that game, and then Banjo hasn't really done anything since. And I was right along there with all the other Banjo fans. It kind of sucked. We got Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, they were great. Some spin-offs, Banjo and Diddy Kong Racing, stuff like that. I think Diddy Kong Racing was actually before Banjo-Kazooie, but regardless, you know, Banjo on Nintendo was great, and then Microsoft took it away, and I didn't care for Nuts and Bolts very much. Nuts and Bolts came out in 2008, which I think is the same year that Brawl came out. So while I was a big fan of Banjo-Kazooie, and I really wanted Banjo-Kazooie back with Nintendo, I was not particularly hopeful that Banjo would actually get into Super Smash Bros. Brawl. At that time, I was pretty aware, I think it was honestly the lead up to Brawl, and trying to figure out which characters might get in and stuff like that, where I really got very well educated with which companies own which characters and what was going on with all that kind of stuff. So I made my Smashboards username PapaGenos in 2007. and that was when I was pushing for characters. Probably the first time I was really pushing for characters in Smash. Smash 64, I think I learned about it in Nintendo Power a few months before it even came out, so that was like a surprise. Melee came out really close after Smash 64, and there wasn't much of a lead up to it that I remember. The internet was pretty young. I'm sure I talked about with friends, before the game came out, like, oh, who do you think's going to be in it? I vaguely remember hearing about Roy and not knowing who Roy was, and we thought it was Roy Koopa, and I vaguely remember seeing Ice Climbers online before the game came out and thinking it was Eskimo Bob. If you remember Eskimo Bob from very, very early internet, like, Flash videos. So anyway, at the time when Brawl was coming out, 2007, lead up to Brawl, I really wanted 3 characters. 3 characters were my most wanted characters. Number 1 was Geno. And then I also wanted Little Mac, and I wanted Banjo Kazooie. Now here was the thing. I thought Little Mac had the best shot. I thought Little Mac is a first-party Nintendo character. I thought Punch-Out was a big series that wasn't in the game yet, so I really thought Little Mac was going to get in. I remember when they showed Little Mac off as an assist trophy, I was pretty bummed. Geno, I thought, had a pretty good shot because we had seen that old series were getting revived, like Kid Icarus with Pit getting in. We had seen that third parties were something that could happen, like Snake, and this was around the time when Square and Nintendo were just starting to be friends again. So there was this big push to get Geno back on Nintendo, back in Mario in some way, and we saw, Smash was going to be, that was how it was going to happen. And I think there was like this poll in Japan, really tough to source this, but I'm pretty sure this was a real thing. There was a poll in Japan, and the most wanted characters for Smash were Sonic was number 1, Mega Man was number 2, and Geno was number 3. So I thought Geno had a really good shot. And then my third, I don't know if I want to say third most wanted. I wanted all these characters about equally, to be honest, but the third character I really wanted, but I was less hopeful for, was Banjo Kazooie. And I was less hopeful because them being bought out by Microsoft was pretty recent. Nuts and Bolts, comes out the same year as Brawl, so I didn't really think Banjo Kazooie would get in, but I did really want them for Smash. I just didn't think it was going to happen. So when I went to make my username for Smashboards way back in 2007, those are the characters I wanted. Little Mac, Geno, and Banjo Kazooie. I went with PapaGenos because I thought it was just a funny pun on a pizza restaurant, PapaGenos, but spell it like Geno from Mario RPG, one of my most wanted characters. It honestly could have just as well have been some pun on Banjo-Kazooie or some pun on Little Mac. Those characters I wanted about equally. So I was really stoked when Little Mac got in. I didn't have this channel back then, but yeah, if you guys saw when Mac got in, I was super excited. So essentially what I'm getting at is that I've wanted Banjo almost as much as I want Geno, and basically Banjo, Little Mac, Geno have all been my top 3, and they're fighting for the number 1 spot. I put Geno above basically just because I made the name and have really wanted him specifically for Smash for a long time because of that. But yeah, it's pretty darn close. So getting Banjo in is huge for me. I'm just trying to stress that. However, to be honest, Banjo always seemed like the least likely to actually ever get in. When Smash Wii U 3DS was happening, I really didn't think Banjo had much of a shot. After the Smash ballot came out, the 2 characters I voted for were Geno and Banjo-Kazooie. Little Mac was already in the game at that point. So those are the characters I wanted, those are the characters I voted for, and of course after Cloud got in, and we got the Geno Mii costume, which even had splash art like it was a newcomer, I really thought going into Smash Ultimate that Geno was the one that was likely going to get in. I thought Banjo-Kazooie had a much lower chance of getting in, but Geno I thought had a pretty good shot. Even as recently as about like a year ago, when I first made this channel, when E3 happened last year, I really thought for Smash Ultimate, Geno had a pretty good shot, and Banjo was much less likely. Possible, but much less likely. I mean, there were some things going for Banjo, but when I was speculating, in the early days of Smash Ultimate speculation here, I was really thinking Geno had a very, very good shot, especially for base roster, and Banjo was like a maybe for DLC. We then, of course, got Ridley in Smash finally, we then got K. Rool in Smash finally, and suddenly all of those fan favorites, the ballot choices, seemed much, much more likely. So characters like Geno and Banjo both got boosted, in my opinion. They seemed like they might actually happen. This was like last August, basically after K. Rool got in. After we got Ridley and K. Rool, it was like, okay, maybe they really are, giving us the fan characters here. So I was hopeful for Geno, I was hopeful for Banjo, but nothing certain yet. I was just kind of hopeful. we got the Isabelle reveal trailer, and then Box Theory came out, and people's expectations were pretty low, mine included. I thought Box Theory seemed pretty likely going up through like September and stuff like that, and that was until the Grinch Leak happened. Before I get into the Banjo side of the Grinch Leak, I just want to point out a few interesting things in retrospective about the Grinch Leak. One of the most interesting things that I like to bring up when people are talking about the Grinch Leak to me is that the Grinch Leak was the first video I ever made that people asked me to change the thumbnail. The thumbnail had the characters in it, and I always put whatever characters were in whatever leak or rumor or speculation thing I was doing. I always put the characters in the thumbnail, and people were like, you need to take that thumbnail down. You're, giving away the characters for the game. You got to change that thumbnail. A ton of people asked me to do this, and I actually changed the thumbnail. So in retrospective, when people are like, oh, not that many people believe the Grinch Leak, I'm over here like, no. It was the one video, the one time people were telling me not to put the characters in the thumbnail. So yeah, a lot of people were believing the Grinch Leak when it happened. I think they did a poll on Smashboards at the time, and it was something like 75% or 80% of the people on Smashboards were believing the Grinch Leak, thought it was real. And, now when you ask people, a lot of people will be like, yeah, I didn't really believe it. And I believed it publicly, so, I have to take the heat for that, and I understand that. But the truth is, a lot of people were believing it. I just believed it publicly. I also said the Grinch Leak was unfakeable, and a lot of people have come at me for that, and I honestly stand by that. Obviously, the Grinch Leak is fake, and the banner itself was fake and could be faked, and I never said the banner couldn't be. But what I said was unfakeable about it was all the extra evidence that was just kind of linking to it. For example, like, it had Isaac on it, and Isaac had a vine next to him, something that, like, nobody who was like into Golden Sun and was going to represent Isaac in Smash would, draw him as having a vine near him. That the vine thing, that was going to be like part of his moveset, a major part of his moveset that would end up in like the banner art. But he had a vine next to him, and then that like week when the Grinch Leak was active and people were, talking about it, we got this like new trailer from Wendy's, a new like Smash trailer, and it showed a new item, which was a sprout in a bubble, and people were thinking like, the sprout looked a lot like the sprout from Golden Sun that you grow into a vine, and then we have Isaac on the leak with the vine, and there was multiple things. There's probably like 4 or 5 things like that were just something that the faker, the person who faked the Grinch Leak, had no control over. So was that aspect unfakeable? It was, and that's what was making me really believe it. That, and of course, the person telling me Banjo was in. I'll get into that in a second. But, when people come at me like, yeah, you said it wasn't able to be faked, and it was fake, man. I'm like, yeah, but certain aspects of it, I still stand by. It got extremely lucky. It wasn't, you couldn't fake the luck that it got. It's kind of crazy. So the leak getting insanely lucky and getting a ton of evidence that made it seem very real aside, one major thing that happened during it was that someone contacted me and told me they had a Microsoft source, and that this Microsoft source was sure Banjo was in. Banjo was in for sure, and they had heard the other names on the Grinch Leak. Now, we were never sure what heard the other names on the Grinch Leak actually meant, and if they were only sure of Banjo, obviously that made all the other names lesser to some extent. Heard might have been, I've heard people speculating about those characters, and without giving away exactly how this chain of information was happening, we couldn't exactly just ask the Microsoft source what they meant by that. This was sort of just information we were given, and we just had to take and sit with and hope. Now, I get a lot of people who contact me telling me they have a leak, or they know some insider information, or this character is happening, blah, 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 and 99% of the time, I have to just say, oh, that's cool, I'll keep an eye on that, we'll see if anything happens for it. So I don't just talk about anybody coming to me, talking to me about leaks and stuff like that, characters and stuff like that. So there was a reason I trusted this person, and I can't tell you guys that reason. I said that before during the Grinch Leak. There was a reason based on who they were, that they would have this kind of connection, that I thought this information was more valid than the 99% of other people that come to me with information. So I do filter this stuff. I filter it in the same way that I filter what leaks and speculation and rumors and stuff I talk about. I only talk about the ones that seem like they might have some credibility, that they might have some reason to actually happen. And it's the same with when some random person comes and talks to me and tells me they have some information, if I tell it to you guys openly. So this person, again, I'm not going to out who they are, but they came to me and I trusted them for reasons I can't tell you. And I trusted that what they were telling me about having a Microsoft source that was sure of Banjo was likely real. And so during the Grinch Leak, when Banjo was on the Grinch Leak and we were all trying to figure out if it was real or not, I publicly told everyone that I had this source telling me about their Microsoft source saying Banjo was in for sure. The big issue with the Grinch Leak was that it didn't have Incineroar on it, and a ton of insiders, Verjaben, had heard Incineroar. So I was trying to balance Incineroar being heard by insiders, me having a source with a Microsoft source saying Banjo was in for sure, and the Grinch Leak itself gaining a ton of evidence. It seemed like each day it was getting more and more evidence, more and more things that, again, weren't actually fakeable, things that just were coincidental or it getting lucky. I mean, in retrospect, it was just getting lucky. So I was trying to balance those three things: Incineroar, the Grinch Leak, and my source saying Banjo was in. And so I came up with this idea, just this theory, that maybe Banjo got negotiated at E3. And Sakurai wanted them in base game, so he was trying to, figure out a way to put Banjo in for base game, and maybe Incineroar got pushed back to DLC. That was my thought. I was just trying to make it all work. I was trying to make the insiders be right about Incineroar, I was trying to make the Grinch Leak be right, and I was trying to make my source be right, because they all seemed pretty darn credible every time I was trying to weigh all the information. I was trying to get other people to really look at the Grinch Leak. I was trying to talk to as many people as I could about what was happening. I was trying to figure it out for the community. Honestly, that was what it was. I was trying to figure it out, trying to get as much information out there as I could. This person telling me about the Banjo source, I wanted to get that out to the community. I wanted to get people aware of that, and so we could try to figure this out. If somebody else was saying Incineroar was in, but I had a pretty good source telling me Banjo was in, let's butt heads with those two things and try to figure it out. So I wasn't trying to sensationalize the Grinch Leak. I wasn't trying to I wasn't lying. I wasn't trying to just make up some source or something like that. Honestly, if I were to make up something, if it was a character that I was trying to push in the game to make people think, oh, that character's in for sure just because I liked the character, I would have chosen Geno. I would have said, oh yeah, I got some source telling me Geno's in for sure. And Geno seemed way more likely to me than Banjo anyway. And again, if I was going to just lie and make up some fake source that was telling me some character, I probably wouldn't have gone with Banjo or Geno to make it look like the Grinch Leak was real. I probably would have gone with Shadow or somebody that just seemed pretty likely. I would have been like, yeah, I have this source that's saying, well, I don't know about the whole Grinch Leak, but Shadow's in for sure, because that seemed like something to hedge your bets on. Everybody thought Ken was in, so that wouldn't have made the leak seem any more credible or something like that. But, if I was going to lie, it wouldn't have been Banjo. Banjo was probably the character on there that I thought had the lowest chance, to be perfectly honest, but that's who this source that came to me, who had a Microsoft source, was telling me. They're telling me Banjo, so I just wanted to get the information out to you guys so we could all figure it out. So unfortunately, what happens a lot in the Smash speculation community specifically is we all kind of pick sides, and we don't work together to try to figure out who's actually in the game. We don't share our information. Some people hoard information and not tell people. Some people won't touch a leak or even talk about it or look at it. Sometimes that's because people are afraid of being associated with it, because then your name's going to get dragged through the mud if it doesn't happen and stuff. And I hate all that. This community really needs to be way less toxic about holding everybody, holding stuff against people and getting angry at people for stuff. I mean, I understand not wanting people to lie about stuff, not wanting people to overhype something that turns out not to be true and stuff, but man, people just get really, really just mean at everybody about this stuff. And I'm over here, I just want to get information out there. I want to start a dialogue. For people who don't want to talk about certain things, let's talk about it. I want to talk about it. Let's share information, because maybe your information and my information, we can find a way they work together, or we can figure out something about them isn't true or something here is true. And that's what I'm trying to push. And that's what I was trying to push during the Grinch Leak. And it all basically fell apart when, at the end of the day, the Grinch Leak was in fact faked. It was a faked leak. So after the Grinch Leak turned out to be faked and box theory was true, and honestly, I don't think anybody was all that happy about it. Any real Smash fan wasn't particularly happy. There was people who obviously just giving people hate and stuff online, and they were probably pumped about it because they could go after people like me or anybody else who believed the Grinch Leak. But honestly, the roster was not as good as what the Grinch Leak was. I mean, there's Incineroar fans out there, so I'm sure they were happy. But I think most people would rather have more characters, and there were a lot of fan favorites and stuff. But a lot of people got hate after the Grinch Leak, myself included, obviously. People were coming at me like, haha, you believed the Grinch Leak, you got fooled. I got called Papa Gullible. Some people thought I just straight up lied about the Banjo source and that I was just lying to get views or something, or sensationalize the leak or something like that. Lots of people were like, yeah, you don't have any real information, you're totally fake, blah, blah, blah. When, I just had to kind of sit there and go, man, I was trusting that source. I'm still not sure if it's real or not. I'm not infallible. Like, I could definitely get something wrong. I could trust something that's, false. I did trust the Grinch Leak, so there you go right there. I can get stuff wrong. But at the end of the day, I wasn't sure about the source that was telling me Banjo, but I also wasn't sure it was fake either. So I had to sit on it with just, yeah, it could be true. I don't know. I'm doubting it, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. And a lot of people wanted me to out, who the source was that had the Microsoft source, or explain why I believed it, because if I'm just, blindly believing it and not telling you guys the full picture, and I wish I could, but I can't, people were mad about that, and I totally understand. At that time when I was, kind of losing subscribers, having people give me some hate, calling me a liar and stuff like that, I could have very easily outed my source. I could have said, this is the person who told me the information, so if you're mad at me, be mad at this person, and now that you know who they are, you know why I was trusting it, and I could have deflected a lot of the heat onto them. I didn't do that, and I had promised them I wasn't going to do that. I was grateful to them for telling me the information they told me, and I was trying to get that information out to the community, which I think is what they wanted me to do, is why they told me, because I have a YouTube channel and people watch it and stuff like that. So yeah, I didn't deflect it onto them, I didn't out them, and in the long run, I mean, now Banjo is in the game, so that source seems like the Microsoft source was probably true the whole time. But also, not outing them has done something good for me as well. Other people have come to me with information. Sometimes it's fake, sometimes it's real. Obviously, again, I have to just filter that as best I can. But someone like the VR plant has been completely right with all their information. If I had outed my Banjo source back during the Grinch Leak, I have no doubt in my mind the VR plant would never come and talk to me. I wouldn't have anybody come and talk to me, because I'll just out you if your information doesn't come to pass. And not even just doesn't come to pass, doesn't go exactly as we planned it to. At the end of the day, Banjo was in Smash. That information was real. I trusted the right person with that. But at the time of the Grinch Leak, it seemed like it was really dumb of me to trust that person. So I'm happy in the long run how things have turned out, and I hope people understand why I don't out a source like that, why I can be trusted with information. If you have information you want to tell it to me and you want to remain anonymous, I will keep you anonymous. So yeah, just in retrospective, I guess I'm just happy things went the way they did. But at that time, when the Grinch Leak was first found out to be fake, yeah, it was rough. I was getting a lot of hate, and yeah, I just had to sit on the information about Banjo and hope. So moving forward, after the Grinch Leak was found out to be fake, and I just had to kind of stick the Banjo information in the back of my mind and just hope maybe it would come to fruition in the end. Some things came out that were in favor of Banjo. We got the rare spirits in the code for Smash. That happened very shortly after the Grinch Leak was faked, so that gave me a lot of hope that maybe Banjo was still coming. We had Vergeben saying the Minecraft content, so it did seem like some sort of Microsoft rep would happen. We slowly got information that seemed to suggest Nintendo and Microsoft were pretty close, so I was fairly hopeful, and as more time went on, it seemed to snowball that, okay, things seem more and more likely for Banjo, especially in the last week or two right before E3. A lot of stuff came up for Banjo, but for a while there at the beginning, I was banking on just that source being right and the small bits of evidence for Banjo, like the rare spirits in the game and Banjo getting a lot of merchandise and stuff like that. I did have, throughout the whole thing, people coming at me. I had, I know there's this image that says it's Papa Banjo instead of PapaGenos, and I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be insulting, I focus on Banjo leaks or Banjo information, or I'm biased towards Banjo or something like that. And I am. I mean, I like Banjo. He's my second most wanted character. But I was still focusing on credible stuff. That was the whole point. Again, if I were going to just fake a source or something, if I faked the Grinch Leak source thing, I would have faked for Gino. He's my number one. But yeah, so I was pushing for Banjo. More and more stuff was coming out for Banjo. And I'd continue to get hate from people. Some people would still tell me they want to know who my Banjo source was. They'd still tell me, I'm an idiot, I believe the Grinch Leak, what an idiot, why is anybody believing that, this guy, why is anybody listening to his videos anymore? I had one, I'll leave the name out of this because I'm not looking for any trouble or anything, but I had one very prominent person in the YouTube gamer community post on Twitter some very rude, hateful things against me and my channel, and how after the Grinch Leak no one should trust me anymore. I never have any real information or anything like that. So yeah, I went through a lot just waiting and hoping that the Banjo stuff did pan out, and my whole believing the Grinch Leak thing wasn't totally crazy, that believing that source actually had some merit to it, and hopefully people would understand that eventually. After we got our first DLC character, Joker, slowly over time, more people started talking about which characters we're going to get in. We had like Indie Gamer Chick actually say something about Banjo. Again, redemption for her. I'm talking about redemption for myself here, but redemption for her at the end of everything. We had like Tansa and Vergiben talking about a Dragon Quest rep. Eventually Vergiben said it was Erdrick. Tansa also said Erdrick, and they weren't wrong. I mean, we got Hero. Vergiben also specifically said Luminari and Erdrick were mentioned at the same time when he heard about them, and Tansa said that their source just said a Dragon Quest protagonist, and they just weren't corrected when they said Erdrick. So yeah, they were both right. Actually, their vagueness was totally correct on that one. And then it was just a long time coming where I was just hopeful about my source, hopeful about the little bits of information going for Banjo, that then eventually Shinobi over on Reset Era came out with that cryptic thing implying that Banjo was coming. And then Vergiben jumped on board. Banjo is 99% likely. And this just all snowballed in the last week before E3. And then boom, we got Banjo revealed. It actually happened finally. And I just felt very vindicated at the end of all of that. Very redeemed. And I hope people can trust me again. Honestly, I don't know if trust is the right word, but I hope I've gained that back with people. After the Grinch Leak, after believing the Grinch Leak, and talking about my source and stuff like that, I'm not infallible. I can definitely get stuff wrong. I've definitely believed things that turned out to be wrong, and I'm sure in the future I'll have information that doesn't pan out. I'm sure I've had information that hasn't panned out. But I hope people at least trust that I'm doing this for the community. I'm doing it for you guys. I'm not making stuff up. I'm trying to get information out there. I'm not, sensationalizing. I'm not just picking every random thing to talk about just because it has a character people want or a character I want. I'm not pushing some agenda or something like that. I'm literally just trying to get information out there, trying to figure out stuff for these games. Mostly Smash and characters, but I do other stuff too, and yeah, I'm just trying to get information out there. And when I put something out there like the VR plant stuff, there's a reason for that. There's a reason I'm trusting that person. If I'm putting out something like the Banjo source during the Grinch Leak, there's a reason I'm trusting that person. In the same way that I filter what leaks and rumors and speculation I decide to talk about, I'm doing the same thing for the random people coming to me telling me they have some information or this is real or something like that. I'm trying to filter it. I can get it wrong, but I hope you guys now trust that I'm doing it for you guys. I'm doing it to try to figure out which characters are in this game. So yeah, I just hope at the end of all this, Banjo getting in is some redemption, and people trust my opinion or what I have to say is, not totally true, like it might not 100% happen, but that it is with the best intentions in mind, that I am trying to help the community and help us all figure this stuff out. The goal of the channel has always been to just report on this stuff, get the rumors out there, get the speculation out there, get the leaks out there, so we can talk about them and we can try and figure it out. Because I just find that really fun. Honestly, I just really find it super fun. And I hope the community can just be less toxic going forward. I really do. It's something that I think this community struggles with greatly. It's all about people wanting to be on the right side and not the wrong side. And they don't want to even discuss stuff with other people, or they want to hide information because they can be the one who said, "I told you so," or something like that. And it's like, man, if we just were to talk openly, discuss openly, if we were to be more forgiving to people who are talking about something, this is what I've heard, this is why I'm believing this, let's discuss whether or not it seems believable, I just think things would go so much better. So I really hope going forward, people, in channels that are much bigger than mine, maybe tone down the smugness and actually create dialogues, because we could figure more out that way. I think if the whole community stopped trying to be so right about which characters are in or out or what, and we were a little more focused on just spreading information and talking about all this stuff and having fun trying to speculate on it, I think we'd figure stuff out much more smoothly, and I hope that's where we can go moving forward from this. So that's basically everything I wanted to say with this. Just kind of a stream of consciousness, retrospective, just me talking about all the stuff that just happened, getting Banjo and Smash. I'm super excited. I have a new main. I've been trying to main Little Mac, and he's like at the bottom of the tiers list. It's really hard, which I guess kind of fits him. He's sort of an underdog, so whatever. But I'm super excited to play as Banjo, get Banjo in Smash. I'm so happy with how they are represented. They look great. I gotta wait till the fall to play as them, but I'm okay with that. Super excited. I hope, maybe the Geno Mii costume can come back. So if I can play as Little Mac and Banjo and Geno ends up being a Mii costume character, and I can accept that. Geno can be on the level of like Isaac and Chibi Robo and stuff. That's fine. I understand. I'll be pretty excited. I'm very, very happy with what's happened here. So yeah, I'm just in total celebration mode right now. So I hope the takeaways here are that I've gained some of your trust back. I hope there's some redemption here. I can only ask for that. So I hope you guys now will trust me a bit more. Again, I can be wrong, but hopefully there's some trust regained. I hope the community can be less toxic and we can all be a little more open to speculating and having fun with this instead of being so all about going on teams and which side we're on and just being against each other, or who's right and who's wrong. It doesn't help any of this. It doesn't help us figure out what's happening. And in fact, it can muddy up and cover up real information. So hopefully that doesn't happen. And for all the people who wanted Banjo alongside me, let's celebrate. Like, this is awesome. We actually got Banjo in Smash. So if you guys have any comments or thoughts about any of the stuff I talked about in this retrospective video, leave them below, and hopefully next time I'll be talking about speculation and rumors and leaks again. So thanks for watching, guys. So once again, thank you guys for all the subscribes, all the likes. Really helps out the channel. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do so, or like the video, or leave a comment, whatever you want. Until next time, have a good one.